Good afternoon. I'm going to call the Nashville MTA WeGo board meeting to order. First on our agenda is the approval of the June 28th minutes. If I could have a motion for approval. So moved. Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. 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 Motion carries. The minutes are approved. And next I have public comments. I only have two. Well, I have three. Are there any more public comments coming up? Okay, I have three so far, but Steve Ryder. And just as refresh everybody's recollection, we have 3 minutes, and when you're down with 1 minute remaining, I'll lift up my hand to remind you that you have 1 minute remaining of the 3.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can hear you.
Okay, I wasn't quite sure. I think all of you know we had the budget time. We had a very challenging time. MTA was looking at millions of dollars of cutbacks. That was pretty much averted. I don't think we'll be that lucky the next time around. When the city's going out and selling property to try to meet their budget expectations, that's not a good sign. And I think every department has gotten, I don't know if Walter seriously prepared for the finance meeting, but the departments are being asked to make cutbacks already, and we're still in the first month of our budget cycle, which is really not a good sign at all. So I know when Steve was making his presentation to the Metropolitan Council, and he said, look, if you're going to make cuts to that magnitude, we're going to have to cut services or raise fares, and neither one which he wanted to do. I think that we have to be realistic. This is not the only department that's going to be probably going to cut back. General Hospital, everybody's going to be cut back next time around. So I think we have to prepare for that, to make expectations. Prepare for that. So that's up to you. You've got to make some tough calls. The other thing I want to bring to the attention is that there's been a lot of incidences that have happened around public transit. There are 3 homicides that happened at Bay Area Rapid Transit, BART. There was a gal who was attacked at Friendship Heights, Washington, D.C. Station manager had to protect herself with a knife. We saw tragic incidents that happened in Atlanta off of Forsyth. And I don't think everybody quite understands that poor people are being squeezed big time by the federal government, by the state government, and by the local government. And it's causing a tremendous amount of anxiety and stress. And so I think that it's very difficult in this type of environment to go out and to manage when you have so many people that come to one spot and try to make it safe for everybody. And you could lose some choice riders. I mean, you've had a shooting that happened not only at the bus depot, but also on a bus. And so I think you have to be prepared for that, your communications team, for when that does happen, because it's going to happen again. And I think you have to reassure people that bus transportation, we're trying to make a stronger and better system for everybody. So with that, look forward to let some other people talk, and it's good to see you again. I haven't been here for quite a while, and I'm interested to hear the rest of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate your comments, appreciate you being here. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Mr. Thomas.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just wanted to have a few comments. On the 9th of this month, the 52B bus that leaves from the jailhouse at 7 or 8 in the morning, the driver did not have a seatbelt on the entire trip. On the 13th of the month, number 50 Charlotte was supposed to leave the station by 1:30. The driver arrived at 1:35, and the bus did not depart at 1:39, so he's already got late getting out there. On the 22nd, I was on the 52B bus that left the station at 12:35, which ended at 4th and Broadway, and we had the green light to go across, but couldn't go across because the green bus, number 60, was blocking the entire Broadway area for 4th Street to go across. And on the 50 Charlotte bus, the driver also hit the brakes real hard because logs were being thrown forward, and others were making comments about that. I was just recently on one of the new buses, and those have those hard plastic seats on it. not a good fit for people with bad backs, because from the short little amount of ride I was on, my back pain started, my waist went to about my mid-back. So we have to get, if us individuals have to get cushions, we have to get cushions, or if we get the comfortable seats back in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Knight. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My issue is about buses, as always. I just want to make sure, I know I've talked about this in the past, making sure that the 800 series buses to 800 to 885, 600 to 659, those buses were into service around, I think, maybe 2004. And all the way up until this point, those buses are trash. Quite a few of them are the reason why we had the service cutbacks. And we are literally at a point where if those buses do not start to come out of service within the next year or two, you're going to have a bigger problem, because you're not going to have to worry about your purple buses, because the only buses that you're going to have working are your purple buses. So literally at this point, you all need to make sure that the staff and then whatever funding that's coming in, even if you have to look at other ways. I've actually been talking to senators and other council members to see about getting extra funding to MTA WeGo at this point, because there's a serious issue with a lot of these buses. We have buses that came in 2010 after the flood. They're garbage. Buses, I think it's like 186 all the way up to 199, trash. There's, matter of fact, 199 was downtown, broke down right in front of the convention center when I got down there. So that's not a good sign. The driver had the back thing open up. The passengers had to get off the bus. I actually got off of bus 197 and we were jerked around because the bus was stalling. So, I mean, this is not something that's always an air conditioner issue. It's just a simple fact that the new team that has come in within the past few years, they are really working hard to try to correct these issues. It's just the past administration, the past CEO, they didn't give a crap, and they didn't care about the people either, and they were basically getting funds repeatedly, misuse of funds, and this is why we're in the position that we're in now. So I want to make sure that everybody that's present within this board and that's here presently today, make sure that they literally make sure that when they get a complaint about whatever bus, you take it seriously. Because the last thing I want to see on the news is somebody getting hurt because there was a bus incident where it broke down or it caught on fire. So literally at this point, we need to make sure that if we can possible, if funds allow, that at least 20 to 25 buses are coming in here every single year for the next 5 years at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. I don't have any other public comment. No one else? Okay. Going once, twice, 3 times? That closes the public comment section. Thank you. Appreciate y'all being here. Mr. Searcy, Operations and Finance Committee.
Right. We have one recommendation for action for this board, the CDM Smith Music City Central Task Order Amendment. Staff is asking that we provide an additional $130,000 to $289,000 already allotted for the construction management of MCC. The funds being provided pursuant to Section 5307. Our committee finds that this recommendation is in order and asks the board to consider same.
That is a recommendation from the committee requiring no second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. The motion carries. Thank you very much. This will be interesting. We can't wait until it's done. And I do want to just, make one comment that I know the whole team is working extremely hard on making certain that Central, just Central, is the place that WeGo. It's really shine in its majestic purple. And I've said another half hour, okay.
That's enough.
But seriously, I know that this is a huge team effort, and I think that Nashville is going to be so much better off once we finish these renovations. And I recognize that it certainly feels like a hardship at times for maybe some of our riders, but I think at the end of the day, the trade-off will be
And our neighbors.
amazing. And our neighbors, but it's okay. Our neighbors sometimes impact us as well, and we've been good neighbors as well, so we all share that cup of sugar between one another. So I think that's a good thing. But I'm really excited, and thank you to all of you who are working so hard to make this great. So I'm sorry.
Proclamation there.
Yes.
So the New Initiatives and Community Engagement Committee had a good discussion last hour. Felix and our vendor, Justin Cole with Transportation Management Design, presented the Comprehensive Operations Analysis, which will have a groovy new name the next time I see Felix. But it's a really important project that we're looking at right now. City hasn't looked for a number of years at how to maximize efficiency, serve the customer best through route redesign, spacing of stops, the whole 9 yards. So they'll be working on this. There'll be a public comment period this fall, and the committee discussed how important it is for us to message this appropriately because we're working really hard to improve the system for all of our customers and future customers. So thank you for that great report. We also had 2 action items for the board. The first is around advertising policy. As many of you know, we've had several discussions here at the board about philosophic direction of our advertising, a lot of discussion around advertising on the buses and what we feel will be best for the brand and for the organization, balancing out revenue considerations. And so the staff has gone and put together an updated advertising policy for the board to adopt because we haven't reviewed that policy for several years. And the biggest change, there's 2 changes. One is they did a great job creating a purpose statement, which we've never had for our advertising policy. So I think that's a great addition. And so you've got the purpose for the policy. And as far as the standards, the only real appreciable difference here is line item number 4, which is the Metro Council expressed to us a real interest in us being kind of more user-friendly for public service advertisements and nonprofits who have a real need in the community. So we have added a clause to make us more open and embracing of those kinds of opportunities, and that's a policy change. So the board had great discussion. I don't think anybody had any issues with the policy, and our crack legal counsel has told us that that is all in good legal order. So with that, the NICE committee would like to recommend that the board approve the use of the amended policy as presented. And they'll use these to check the assumptions that we're building into revising our advertising contracts and kind of our everyday work. And we'll factor that into our pending contract renewal with our third-party advertising sales agent. So that is a recommendation to the board.
With there being a recommendation from the committee, there's no second required. Is there any discussion? With there being no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, the motion carries. So this is great, thank you.
I feel like I'm using a lot of words up here. We have one other action item for the committee. Let me see if I can kind of distill this down, see how I do with this. So WeGo Central has been the only downtown hub for transit for a number of years. And the renovations are going to be great, but it also, in our future, will be at capacity. And it isn't great for the city to just have one of these with our long-term future. So we don't have a set date or even a set project or time, but in looking towards the future, the Music City Center, the Convention Center Authority, expressed an interest in a parcel of land which is south of Broadway, south of the Convention Center. They have an immediate use for a marshalling yard. for their purposes. And so they identified this piece of property, and in the midst of all this, it seems to be an ideal future long-term location for a second downtown transit hub. So our organization, the Music City Center, their attorneys, our attorneys, everybody came together, looked at it. The good piece of it is Metro already owns a piece of that property, and the Convention Center Authority has already proceeded on another piece, so it really just involves a couple of pieces of land. This has no budget implications for the MTA today. We aren't putting any money into it. It's just what we have brought to you today is a resolution that basically says we are acknowledging a potential future intent for this piece of property with no financial commitments at this time. The Convention Center Authority will take title to the property. They'll use it for their purposes. And then down the road, when we get needing this, those discussions will take place, come back before the board and all that. But this was a good time to do it because real estate's not getting any cheaper in Nashville. So it was really a great partnership to accommodate their immediate use and sort of help ensure our long-term plan or future is sort of protected. So how did I do?
I think you summed it up
Did
really
I do
well.
good? Okay.
The only thing I would add is that this wasn't a new project. We identified as South of Broadway hub in the In Motion strategic plan, so almost actually identically on this parcel. So I'll give the In Motion team credit for some level of ESP or something.
Right. So the NICE committee had discussion about it. There's no budget implications. So in light of that, we are recommending to the full board that we adopt the resolution of intent that we're to contract with the Convention Center Authority on a future potential transit hub. Okay, that's what we said.
You did marvelous with that. So you really did. That being a recommendation of the committee, does not require a second. Is there any further discussion? No discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes, and thank you. Well done, thank you very much.
Okay, that was the end of the NICE committee, so thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you all both very much. So the chair's report, I don't have much, but first of all, I just want to say thank you to our community for being here and providing us with public comments today. Also, just I'm very appreciative of the staff, and as you presented to us today, it's just this constant and continuous improvement on your behalf to continue to make WeGo Public Transit a great place. You know, the information about the route changes, the advertising, the updated policy, the constant conversation about how we look to the future and how we continue to make WeGo the better every day. So just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. And just on another note, as you recall last month, our ATU President Patrick Green came in and discussed the issue of operator assaults during his public remarks to the board. And Steve, our CEO, asked the staff to sort of assemble what's going on, what's not going on, and how we can best address it. So as a result of that, Steve has created a summation and can sort of share that in his report. But I think one thing as a board, what we would like for Steve to continue to do is to keep us apprised of what's happening, what kind of complaints are being received, so we can sort of make certain as we go about the work that we do, that we are always making certain that safety is paramount to our drivers, to our passengers, and to always keep an eye on what is. And if adjustments need to be made, that we make those adjustments, and that we are steadfast in our approach to safety, and again, keeping safety paramount to everything that we do. So I appreciate you going out there. I appreciate Patrick. I think he's back there. I thought I saw him earlier. For bringing it to our attention and for us to be able to sort of make this too part of board reporting when it happens. So I appreciate it very much. thanks to the Lent Center for being able to offer us this beautiful space. This is beautiful space in here, so thank you, Lent Center, for allowing us to use the space here today. And that concludes my thanks to you, Janet, for taking over last month. I appreciate it.
Oh, sure.
Yes, appreciate that.
This wasn't as wild as when Hannah did it.
I know. That's okay. That's okay.
Try to keep it in the lane.
Stay in the lane. That's a really good thing. So that really concludes my chair's report. I will say this, if it's okay with my fellow board members. I did see someone from the public who has been here before that has given a public comment, and I'm willing for you to reopen for a 3-minute conversation if you wanted to give something. I know you came in late in the back. No, you're good? Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So that concludes my chair's report. And next to you, Mr. Blaine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. And I did speak to Glenn and to Hannah. They both regret not being here. They're out of town traveling, so they were unable to make it. Just a couple of quick items to update you on. We had a fairly meaty agenda on some of the bigger projects we're doing. With respect to the Murfreesboro Road project, our transit signal priority project, and a number of intersection improvements, that continues to plug along. Quite a bit of activity out there, so if you travel along Murfreesboro Road and you see crews at the various intersections, they're putting in a lot of sidewalks and crossings and other upgrades. A couple of the issues that we're tracking down.
What's the completion date schedule?
Should be mid next year, mid 2019.
Yeah.
A lot of it will be software testing, because as you'll recall, this will move to a centralized signal system, so a lot of the project entails running fiber and then connecting that fiber to Metro's central traffic control facility. A couple of the issues that we're dealing with now are just some work coordination issues and easements with the airport authority, and also utility coordination with NES. That's always a challenge in these sorts of projects. We put a lot of stuff on those poles, and sometimes figuring out where to put it all is a bit of a challenge. We've spoken to you in prior months about the rate at which we're advancing a few different neighborhood transit centers. Janet spoke earlier about the secondary downtown, the 3 neighborhood transit centers that are moving at various speeds. It's almost kind of like watching a horse race. It'll be interesting to see who comes across the line first. But we continue to work with the school district on the Hillsborough High School Center and that renovation. Also with Public Works on a traffic design plan down there. We are kind of waiting on TSU for their review of the site, looking at that North Nashville site, having that work through their government structure. And the Clarksville Pike site continues to generate quite a bit of interest, so we're actually in the process of valuing that real estate to talk to the developer about a potential project there. And for a few of those projects, we do have at least seed money to put toward design and some initial property acquisition, what have you. Just I'll remind you, every month, at least until, I guess, our September meeting, September 23rd to 26th, we're hosting our National Trade Association, the American Public Transportation Association. Once their program is out, I'll make sure you all get a copy, because you have access to those sessions. So if you say, yeah, I want to pop over to see a session on whatever, mobility on demand, or whatever the case might be, we would absolutely love to have the board's participation in that meeting. You heard a little bit about the Music City Central renovations, skid testing notwithstanding. Buses did, from what I understand, a little better job than some of the cars on the parking ramp when that went in. I'm sorry, Trey. Of course, everybody I talked to, when I talked to Ed, and I talked to anybody who was here when they opened the building, they're like, well, yeah, that happened when we opened the building. So, institutional memory is
Somebody
a
should have told that.
marvelous thing. But we expect to be transitioning from the lower level construction, where that's wrapping up, to the upper level, which will change that whole traffic pattern about a week after school starts. So we're going to give the kids 1 week of somewhat, where we know what we're doing and they don't, and then hopefully everybody together will not quite know what we're doing after those first few days. But I want to give particular credit to the engineering construction group and our contractor, who's been very good to work with, as well as operations, customer care, and everybody involved in coordinating. Every Friday morning, we get together for updates, and there's about 12 or 15 of us around the table, so it really is an all-in kind of project. Frankly, and back to the issue of having multiple centers, it's also a reminder of how mission critical that building is. So when it kind of goes out of commission, whether it's for construction or, say, a presidential visit, it really is disruptive to the overall operation. Points for the future. You heard earlier about our new bus delivery schedule, about a dozen out on the street now. More going out every week. We should start to see our new access ride vans delivered within the next month or so. So by September, we should be, you should be seeing a lot of purple out there. And also to Mr. Knight's issues that will have service reliability back to where it needs to be. I always try to update you on some of the RTA items of interest. There's plenty going on at the RTA. We're wrapping up construction on the Hamilton Springs train station. We expect to soft open that station in August, and then we've scheduled a ribbon cutting and a dedication ceremony on September 6th. If any of you all get invitations, and if you all want to wander out to Wilson County with me, it's a lovely ride in the country. We're continuing to work on the South Corridor study with Metropolitan Planning Organization in Williamson and Murray counties, so that will progress along. Also on the STAR, we're expanding the parking lot at Mount Juliet, which is at capacity. Mount Juliet's kind of an interesting entity to deal with. I'll leave it, I know there was media, maybe she left. They're interesting to deal with. I'll leave it at that. And the RTA did receive renewals from TDOT on a lot of its CMAQ awards to continue a lot of the commuter bus operations into the future. This year, in past years or in recent years, we've been operating a Titans train that was under sponsorship of Miller Coors. They've decided not to renew, but we are going to at least examine if there are potential alternate sponsorship opportunities to see if it's possible to continue that. And I would give the members an update on the information that Gail referred to on security, but she took my notes. Oh. So I asked operations.
Now they know we don't do it from memory. We try.
And security for, just about a 6-month update, January through June incidents on operators. And during that period of January through June 2018, we had 11 reported incidents, essentially expressing a feeling of threat to a radio controller. Of those, most were classified as verbal assaults, or threats as opposed to physical. One classified as inappropriate, improper physical contact. It was less of, say, a threat of assault than it was an improper advance. And then 3 were classified as physical assaults. So it is tough out there. It's a tough environment. Mr. Ryder's comments alluded to that. There's folks under a lot of stress, and sometimes that stress isn't necessarily manifest in the appropriate way. So obviously it's a big effort. Mike Moore is stepping up his role. Traditionally, he, as security manager, he's focused on MCC. So we're getting him more of an onboard presence and chatting with MMPD about how we might, enhance the out of MCC presence, but certainly something we're all sensitive to.
Question, how do we know, it's just like the other statistics that we track, our goal is zero, right? Our goal is absolutely for this never to happen, but how do we as a board know when it goes from becoming this, you can't get to zero to a level that this is not acceptable? How do we know what that threshold is?
Well, and I'll speak generally, it applies to this issue, I'll speak generally. In some areas, like the road calls that we report or service reliability, there are what I'll call national metrics that you can go to. And some of those are standardized through our federal reporting process. Others are not quite as easy to get to, and some of that has to do with security, because to be perfectly honest, things that we may record, particularly the verbal assaults, aren't even recorded, in what I'll call the larger systems that frankly see, much more routine acts of aggression. So it's a little tricky. We're going to do some work with our, with our national partners to see if there's a better way to benchmark that and look at targets. And obviously you can go off history too. And, what
course, anytime we have the physical assault of any of our operators one time is
Oh, yeah.
is intolerable.
Or customers.
Yeah, or customers. Yeah.
And Madam Chair, unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you very much, Steve, for the report. And I have to say that I was remiss in my chair's report to thank Jason, Amanda, and India for the rollout of WeGo. I'm telling you, I got, hunked at on West End, because when I saw that first bus, although I knew I was pretty excited about it, I didn't realize the depth of my excitement about it, and I was like, WeGo. Yeah, so as I sort of slowed my
You weren't
own
with a
vehicle
chance
to take
when you
pictures,
did that.
taking pictures, of the bus, but it was a great rollout. The anticipation on Instagram and Twitter was very fun. So you made it really fun and really exciting for people here in Nashville, and people all over, we're signing the bus. So I was remiss in not thanking you all for doing that. And I know that too, while I'm calling 3 names out, that was indeed a complete team effort, and I appreciate the efforts of everybody. And I really appreciate the board, because I think we had really good discussions about branding and how important it was, and how important this is for our city, and how important it is for the future of MTA, and how we can go forward, and all these things that we talked about. So I really appreciate my board colleagues, because you've been in it as much as the staff, well, not as much as the staff, but really being good cheerleaders behind it, and really good supporters of the work.
You're not going shopping next week. We're going to have to get some
We're going to get some
purple.
purple. I have a little leftover purple, because my son's college was purple, so I'm going to have to go pull out what I used to wear when I go visit him. So maybe we could share something. I don't know.
Where you go, Northwest?
No, he went to High Point in North Carolina, and they have purple buses as well.
Yeah.
Very purple. Everything there is purple. So that does, for real, conclude.
For real.
For real. And if no one else has, any other business, if not, then we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.